Hello and welcome to Michelle Sews Again. I'm Michelle. Today I'm going to share with you my experience and my review of the Caladium Jumpsuit by Caramiya. I could be saying that wrong. I apologize if I am. I was totally inspired to do this pattern by Ruthie, who goes by So Many Flowers, S-E-W, of course, So Many Flowers on Instagram. She posted the most gorgeous version. I absolutely loved the fabric that she used, and I was totally inspired by her. This is, if I had seen another version, I don't know if I would have been as inspired. And I actually looked for the fabric that she used. It sold out. I couldn't find it anywhere. And I knew I wanted to do a big, bold print in this pattern just because I feel like it calls for it. So anyway, let me give you a little bit of a description. I've probably already popped up a picture, but let me describe it anyway. It's a very loose fitting, reversible, wide leg cropped jumpsuit. And by reversible, it means you can wear it frontwards or backwards, not turned inside out. Although if you're skilled enough, you could probably do that too. I'm gonna get there one day. I'm just not there yet. Anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit about my experience. I'll tell you a little bit about the pattern, and hopefully this won't be a super long video. All right, so the pattern comes in sizes 0, 0 to 30. And I'm gonna give you the bust, waist, and hip measurements. The most important measurement for this particular garment is the hip. And I'll explain that in a minute. All right, so the 0, 0 to 30 goes from bust size 31 to bust size 58, waist size 23 to 50, and hip size 33 to 60. Those are all inches, by the way. The finished garment measurements are hip 44 to 68 and a half. Sorry, that was waist. Waist size 44 to 68 and a half, hip size 53 to 82 and a half, and the tightest point under the armpit is 33 and a half to 60 and a half. The reason that that measurement is important is because there is no closure on this jumpsuit. You simply pull it on, like through the neck hole, you pull it up. So that's why you've got to make sure that it fits over the hips at that tightest point under the armpit. The length goes from 43 and a half to 47 and a half. And I believe that's from the shoulder. With those measurements, I decided to make the size 24 to 26. It's the second from the largest size. And I went with the recommendation from the pattern instructions. I knew that there was a lot of ease in this, but so here's the thing. While I was tracing the pattern, I was watching YouTube videos because that's what I do. And Natita, I hope I'm saying your name right, I apologize if I'm not. Natita from So Natural Dane happened to post a video on this very subject. She did a challenge with another YouTuber on this. They each made their own version of the Caladium Jumpsuit. And based on Natita's experience, she made a muslin and ended up deciding to go down a size because of the way that the muslin fit her. And, or did she go up a size? I can't remember now. My apologies. Anyway, after my experience with the, my dress the other day that I made, the Sherazade dress from I Am Patterns. And I love the dress. I love the way that it came out, but it definitely convinced me that it's time for me to take the next step in my sewing journey and learn how to do some fitting and just take a little bit more time with my sewing and have a little bit more attention to detail. So because of that experience and because of watching Natita's video on this specific garment, I decided to make my first muslin. All right, so it's, it sounds dramatic to me because it's not something I've ever done. It's not something I ever thought I would do. Patience is not one of my virtues at all. But I want to get better at garment making, and I believe that muslin making is part of that process. I did not make a full muslin. I made a partial muslin. So I was only worried about whether or not I would be able to get the garment over my hips. I wasn't worried about how wide the legs were. I had held the pattern pieces up to my shoulder, and I knew that they weren't going to be too long because they hit me just under my mid-calf. And I figured once it was hemmed, it would be about mid-calf, maybe a little bit longer than mid-calf. And I was happy with that length. I was shocked that I wasn't going to need to cut or shorten the pattern piece. I'm only 5'1", if you aren't aware of that. And so I was really quite shocked that I wasn't going to need it, because even though the description and all of the samples that are made on the website are cropped, that cropped usually means full length for me. So I was quite pleasantly surprised at that. So I did not need to make any adjustments to the length. So again, I made the size 24 to 26. The most complicated part of making this garment was tracing the pattern and cutting out the fabric because the pattern piece for the legs, for the wide legs, is so freaking wide because it's intended to be like loose and flowy. I am lucky enough that I have a separate cutting table in my sewing room, but it's a table that I bought on Amazon. It's not super wide. It has served me well up until this point for everything else that I've needed to trace or cut. But for this particular pattern, I needed to come out to the kitchen table, to my dining table. And my dining table is just a round table. There's just me and my husband. So it sits 4 people. It can fit a couple more if we have company. But it was big enough for me to cut the pattern pieces. I did end up tracing on my little table, which I probably should have brought that out here and traced out here just because it hung off the edge of the table. So I had to make sure I kept everything in perfect place. Luckily I didn't go awry with my tracing. And I did, so if you're not aware, tracing patterns is the pledge that I made to myself for Me Made May. And it goes hand in hand with paying better attention to detail. It will allow me, once I'm ready for that next step, to make adjustments to my patterns. But I also did it because I am on a weight loss journey. I have lost 10 pounds over the last 4 weeks. I know it's slow for some people. It's nice and steady for me. I'm not trying to win a race here. I'm trying to make this long term. In the past, I've always been, how fast can I lose in the shortest amount of time? I'm not on that journey this time. I'm eating healthier. I'm trying to get some activity in. And if I lose something every week, then I know I'm moving in the right direction. So I'm pretty happy with 10 pounds over the course of 4 weeks. Anyway, so I knew even before putting this garment on that it was a garment I was going to want to continue to make as I continued to lose weight. So I needed to trace it because the curvatures for armholes and necklines cross over each other when you're going from a bigger size to a smaller size. So you can't just cut out the bigger size when you're losing weight and think, okay, I'll just cut it down when I start losing weight, because you would have lost some of the curvature for the smaller sizes by cutting out the bigger size, if that makes sense. So tracing it, I contemplated for half a second, believe me, not tracing because the pattern piece was so freaking huge. And contemplated for half a second that when I was ready to make the next size, I would just reorder it from PDF plotting. And I'm like, that's a waste of money, Michelle, don't do it. It's not going to take you that long to trace it out. You've learned that already. So I just traced it out. But the tracing it and the cutting of the fabric were, I'm not even kidding. They were the most complicated part of this, of making this garment. It's crazy how easy it was. All right, so let me get back to the instructions. So the fabric, basically she says that you can use just about any fabric. She actually, even in the instructions, challenges you to find a fabric that it won't work in. So I made mine in this fabulous. I have been addicted to this print since I first picked sewing back up last year. I had bought some. I don't even remember where I bought it from the first time. And I made some pants out of it that it just didn't work at the time. First of all, the pattern, I wasn't used to reading pattern sizes and just assumed every pattern could be made in every size. Not true. And I messed it up by putting, so the pattern was I think it was DG patterns, and it was the Morgan culottes, which I still think is a cute pattern, and hopefully one day soon I'll be able to make them in a size that fits me. But I made them in this fabric, and then they have patch pockets like on the side of the leg, and I put patch pockets in this purple color, and it just made them look cheap. So I did regret that. They didn't fit. So they were part of my purge when I moved from Philadelphia. So when I was thinking about making this Caladium jumpsuit, I knew I wanted a big, bold print. And this immediately jumped into my mind. And I was so thrilled to find that it was still available. And I found it on Amazon. And I believe I bought 3 yards. Now the good news about this fabric is it is a quilting cotton, but it's not stiff like a lot of quilting cottons. It's got a pretty nice drape. So it's a cotton sateen. The best part of it is that it's 108 inches wide. So I didn't have to piece together my legs like a lot of people have talked about doing. I was able to cut it out, and this is leftover. Like, this is only part of my leftover fabric. I believe I have enough. I have 2 pieces that are like this, actually. And I think I might actually have enough. I think I'm gonna make the loungewear set from Peppermint Magazines. I have that pattern printed out. I think I'm gonna make the bottoms out of this and the top out of my really pretty fabric that I got from Thread Crates that I made the skirt part of my Sherazade dress from. And I think those two, I mean, the patterns clash, but I think for me, I think they'll look good together. I love the color combo. We'll see. Anyway, so that's the fabric, and I was lucky that it was so wide that I didn't have to worry about piecing the legs together. So basically what she says is that the fabric requirements, and these are up tos, in the description, 2.5 yards of 54-inch fabric or 3 yards of 45-inch fabric. I thought her payment options were very interesting. She gives you a 3-tier payment system, and she basically tells you pay what you want. And I believe it's $12, $14, or $16. I support small businesses. I can afford it, so I paid the $16. But if you have a little bit of a tighter budget, then you can make adjustments to what you're willing to pay for the pattern. So I thought that was interesting. All right. So as I mentioned, I made my first ever muslin. I just made the bodice piece, so I kind of I took the pattern pieces, I flipped up the leg part right at the crotch curve, so that I knew it was going to fit me all the way down my side. And the size that I traced is the size that fit me. So it worked out well. And that was a quick step, actually. So it did end up, I mean, I worked on this all day. So I started, I want to say about 10:30 in the morning, and I finished at, I want to say around 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the evening. I didn't take a lot of breaks, and that's all in. That's cutting the pattern pieces out from the big AO paper that I get from PDF Plotting. I didn't actually cut the size out. I cut the pattern pieces out and then traced them, and then made the muslin, and then cut out the fabric, and then started sewing. So I took my time. I didn't rush through anything, and so that's about how long it took me. My husband was here watching TV or playing video games, and we would visit every once in a while, but we were kind of each doing our own thing for the day. I didn't end up needing to make any modifications to this pattern. So now I like the loose, boxy, oversized fit. I don't, if I made it in the future when I am a smaller size, maybe I would make it a little bit more shapely. I don't know. I like the way that it fits me right now, so I'm happy with it. My favorite part of the pattern, you guys, I've not experienced this yet. The way that she has you attach the bias tape to the V-neck and to the armholes is my favorite thing ever. And also the facing, because you use bias binding for the V-neck and the armholes, and you use a facing for the square neckline. And she has you attach all of those before you sew up the shoulder seams. So everything's done flat. It was like the easiest way to attach bias binding, and my V was perfect because you also attached the V-neck before you sewed up the center seam. So you're attaching the bias binding to each side of the V-neck separately, and then you're combining the seam so that your V-neck is like perfectly V. So I thought that was amazing. The only thing that I didn't like, and it had nothing to do with the pattern, I think the pattern's brilliant. I'm totally gonna make it again. The only thing I didn't like was the bias binding that I used. I bought some bias binding off Etsy. I'm hoping that it's just super starched and that when I wash it, it'll soften up, but it is so stiff. It's so stiff. It like makes this like at the V and the underarms, it's just like, I don't know. It's too stiff. I don't know how else to explain it. But so the bias binding came, it's really wide and it has a fold on each side. So it's technically, I think that's called single fold because it's not then folded in again on itself. But the way that she has you attach, or she gives you pattern pieces to make your own bias binding. I wasn't interested. I wanted the contrast anyway, so I had bought orange and pink bias binding knowing that I wanted it for this pattern. And so I took the orange and I pressed it so that it was just folded once over. So each of the raw edges met and there was one fold. And because she has you take those two edges, pair them up or match them up to the raw edge of the garment fabric, sew the 1/4 inch, fold it over. She actually wants you to do an understitch before you fold it over and do the top stitch. I skipped the 1/8 inch understitch, and I think it turned out fine. But yeah, when I was repressing the bias binding, it softened up, but then as soon as the steam released, it got stiff again. So I think it just kind of, it didn't wash. I'm assuming it's starch. So I think that when I wash it, I'm hoping it'll soften up because I like the color with this fabric. I just don't like how stiff it is. I talked about that way too long. Anyway, so that is my take on the Caladium Jumpsuit from Caramiya. And I hope that you found this helpful. And if you're at all interested in a super comfy secret pajamas kind of an outfit, then this is totally a pattern for you. Comes in a wide range of sizes, can be made in any kind of fabric. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what I'm going to do with it next. So I hope you enjoyed this. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope wherever you are, it's a beautiful day and that you're able to get in some sewing. Thanks so much. Bye.